we're already down this path. I'm going to just start fresh and welcome you to our coffee people. Thank you for being here. We've already done this, everyone, once. We've been having a little bit of technical troubles, but that's okay. Jonathan, would you mind reintroducing yourself and tell everyone who it is you're working for and what you do there?
Yeah, Jonathan Bass, head of marketing communications for Bellwether Coffee. We make an electric roaster and coffee marketplace in Berkley, California.
You were just telling me before this recording started about kind of some of your first coffee, influential or instrumental coffee experiences before you ended up at Bellwether. Would you mind kind of recovering that just a bit?
Sure. So my first coffee experience, the experience that introduced me to specialty coffee was in Guatemala. At the very end of college, I took a spring break trip with a friend who had worked for the government there, and we took a tour of different places around Guatemala and visited a jade mine. Up until that point, most of the coffee I'd doused with milk and sugar just as a way to get through, all-nighters and tests and that sort of thing. But that was my first introduction to kind of a single origin specialty coffee. Tried the coffee and it was a magical experience. I knew a little bit about food and wine. I'd worked in restaurants and understood that kind of the what terroir was and what a sense of place was in a beverage. And that was the first time I had that experience with a cup of coffee. Fast forward, a number of years later, I was the head of marketing for Google's drone delivery project. And our first launch was in Australia. If you know anything about Australia, it's a very unique coffee culture, a very passionate coffee culture. And really sort of blew me away. It was my introduction to what true sort of coffee passion, a real coffee culture can be. Our number one item were lattes, cappuccinos, because the drone could deliver a latte with the art intact directly to someone's door. One of our partners was DoorDash. And you would never throw a latte or flat white in a thermos and have it bounce around in a car, but the drone could deliver it perfectly. The Australians really appreciated that. We ended up delivering thousands of lattes and cappuccinos over the course of a couple of years and set up a barista in our operations center. And I just learned a ton about coffee as part of that project. After Google, I took some time off. I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I said, I really want to do something in food and beverage. Met Ricardo Lopez, who's been on this podcast, the founder, and learned a little bit more about Bellwether. It's a fantastic product. He gave me some coffee to try, and I was sold.
I had mentioned before, but I feel like we've been promised like drone delivery lattes for quite some time here in the US, and I still haven't seen it quite worked out. You mentioned meeting Ricardo and Bellwether, and for anyone listening, we'll link information about what the Bellwether roaster is, and we'll probably get into that a little bit more at some point. But an all-electric roaster, highly energy efficient, a little bit more environmentally friendly, and portable to some extent, depending on the model that you're not portable, but countertop, I think was always the goal. How did you taste the coffee and it's good. You meet Ricardo, and I know him to be a charming guy and a pretty good salesman. But what made it feel like the right fit for you based on the skills you have and your background and what you were looking for out of life?
Yeah. So my career have mostly been doing, the intersection between sustainability and technology. So, the solar industry with Solar City, energy storage and electric vehicles with Tesla, even, highly efficient electric vehicle delivery with Wing. And so this was a natural next step for me. I wanted to do something in food and beverage. But I wanted to continue to advance sustainability. And this was something that I felt like was having a really significant impact. Coffee roasting is, frankly, a kind of a dirty process. It throws off a lot of smoke, volatile organic compounds, particulate. And this was it's electric, which I think is not unique. There are quite a few electric roasters. But really what's unique about it is the filtration, the closed loop system, that it's ventless. And so you can put this product in a cafe restaurant. That's what it's designed to do. is allow cafes and restaurants to roast in their retail space and have freshly roasted coffee all the time. So I felt like it was a kind of a nice continuation of the projects that I've worked on in the past. And if I was honest with myself and thinking back over my career, the most fun I had, I was an expediter at one point in a restaurant. I was, a server, bar backed at one point. And those are the most enjoyable experiences I have. I love food and wine. And I love coffee. And so this was an opportunity to kind of do something that I had some experience in, but also something that I love. So that was pretty much what
That
sold it for me.
brings up something for me. Yeah, that last thing you said about expediting and working in the restaurant being one of your favorite things, but then you're also in your career and you have all these skills and experience that, and a certain level of income you're probably hoping to make. I spent maybe the last 25 years trying to get out of food and beverage because I grew up in it and I wanted to do anything else and I didn't think of it as a real career. And then all of a sudden one day I realized, no, that was the real career all along. That's the thing that kept me connected to people and uh, I was engaged with. And I found that when I would go into other jobs, be it design or marketing, I would always be picking up extra jobs on the side because it was the thing that, made me happy. You mentioned marketing and all of the things you just told me about it being electric and ventless. That feels like a sell itself sort of product to some extent. To me, if I own a cafe, and I've seen them, working in person. One of our coffee partners actually has a Bellwether in Wausau, Wisconsin. We'll share that link as well to that coffee. Why does a company like Bellwether need a marketing team? What is the goal of your storytelling that they brought in someone like you with all this experience at Tesla and Solar City and Wing?
That's probably a better question than I'd like to admit. Um, I think marketing really is the intersection between, you figure out what the product can do, and you figure out what the customers need and also what they want, and kind of the intersection between those two things. That's where your marketing has to live. So a lot of what we do is amplifying what our customers are doing, right? So each project's been a little bit different for me. And this one, I think one of the most enjoyable aspects of it, it's kind of what this podcast is about. It's about the people, right? So organizing events, creating opportunities for people to experience. We're uniquely capable of roasting coffee at commercial volumes on a trade show floor, right? So having people come and see that, and share their experiences with us. That's been, I think, one of the most valuable pieces of our marketing program. Doing webinars where our customers can explain, their journey. And roasting, I think, for a lot of cafes and restaurants is a leap of faith. It's not something they've done before. They have certain associations with it. What will be involved, how difficult it will be to set up and learn. How difficult it would be logistically. Are there permits? Are there changes they have to make to their building, which don't really apply in our case? It's very easy to set up and use. So sharing those stories with other cafes and restaurants who have thought about roasting but aren't ready to take the leap. So a lot of the job has been connecting, and so the companies. I think the reason marketing is necessary in any company is the company's focused on making the product as great as it could be. And then the marketing is the connection between what the customers want and need and what the product can do.
Sure. Bellwether has been around for over a decade. I mean, from conception to now, where they have at least two different models out that I'm aware of. Uh, I'm wondering now that you've joined kind of what's an established team and, you've been there, I mean, for I think a year and a half. Does that sound right?
About a year.
Okay. What have you found to be kind of the most common misconception about the product that you guys are selling? Because I know that when I'm out in the specialty world, I hear a lot of different things about the Bellwether, and I'm like, I don't know that I think that's accurate.
That's a good question. I think one of the more common misconceptions. So we have a coffee marketplace, and our coffee team they're so impressive. They give me imposter syndrome. Gabe Buscana, I think, was the head roaster at Intelligentsia at one point, was the second employee at Ritual, has done everything there is to do in coffee. He's our green coffee buyer, sits on the mountain and kind of comes down with the coffees that we need to put in the marketplace. Greg Dawson, our head of coffee, was at Pete's for many years, really understands the operational side, and then also as a great coffee sourcer and buyer himself. Our head roaster, Zoe Gegas, is amazing. So I think what people underestimate about Bellwether, they think of it as sort of the electric roaster, but it's really kind of a full service coffee program. And the coffee team is available to every customer to help them set up their menu, to help them source their coffees. Our team you can send us your logo and we'll do a custom label for you. And that's my team that does that. I'm very proud of Gabby who does that work. We'll interface with each customer and help them design a label, because a lot of our customers have never sold, bags at retail before, because they're roasting for the first time. And so we'll help customers with every element of their coffee program, or as much or as little as they want. And I think that's the part that people maybe don't understand about Bellwether, or they think that you have to use the marketplace if you buy the roaster, which is not true. Most of our customers use the marketplace. A lot of our customers source some green from us and some green from other sources, and then some source green on their own and use the roaster to roast it. So I think there's a lot of optionality, and there's sort of a full service aspect to what we provide that a lot of people don't understand or misunderstand.
You mentioned that a lot of your customers might be first time roasters, which I've also kind of seen in action. Why is that? What is it about the Bellwether that's appealing to somebody who maybe wasn't roasting before and now is like, I'm going to make this big change? Because I've been part of a cafe that didn't roast and then transitioned into roasting, and it was a huge operational change for us. So why does the Bellwether appeal to a customer like that?
Yeah, I mean, we call it the shop roaster, right? For a reason. It's designed for cafes and restaurants. It's purpose built to go in an environment like that and be very easy to use. So it's not only electric, it's 30 amp, 220 volts. So basically a standard commercial outlet. You plug it in, and you can start roasting. Most of our customers start roasting, very shortly after they plug it in. Most roasters, and I know you have some experience with this, require either a gas line to be run, or at minimum, ducts or vents to be cut in the wall, like a renovation, require a permit. If you're in a city center or a historic building, or any sort of restrictions, or if you have a commercial landlord, who's going to ask questions about that, like that's an onerous process, and an expensive process. Quite often, the renovation and build out itself can be as expensive as the equipment. So this equipment is designed to go into any kind of retail environment, cafe, restaurant, back kitchen, corporate cafe, hotels, community centers, and allow you to start roasting. Beyond that, the profiles are loaded on the machine, right? So we have, I mentioned the coffee team already, probably the most, the biggest unsung heroes in the company. They design, profiles at light, medium dark, and dark for every origin. Those are loaded on the machine. If you want, you can just start roasting with those profiles, which they spend a lot of time here at headquarters sort of dialing in. If you want to create your own profiles, you can do that too. It's pretty easy to experiment with the software and move the curves around. But we make it very, very easy for cafes and restaurants. That's what this product is designed to do, and I think it does better than any other.
I hope this isn't a term that you guys don't like, but plug and play is what it feels like to me. And what I've seen is somebody can buy it, get started, and then continue to improve their skills until they feel comfortable jumping off. And I think roasting in particular is something I don't do, and there's a reason why. It's because I'm terrified of it, and it's expensive, and there's a lot of trial and error as you're going through that process. And if you want to sell things, or you're trying to actually make money, which a lot of roasters start as home roasters who don't make any money for a reason, this is a way to jump into that. One of the things about the marketplace that I didn't really understand, or I don't understand, is sourcing. And one of the things that Bellwether does or claims to do is that they pay living wages, maybe above what the C market might be. I'm wondering who determines what that is. Is that something that Bellwether's coming up with? Are you depending on economists to do? Because what I think is a living wage for me might not be what someone else thinks is a living wage for me. So, how does that process work? And how do you guys navigate questions about economic sustainability versus actual sustainability environmentally? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does. That's a great question. I mean, the coffee team determines living income wage. It's sort of independent of fair trade and it's independent of fair trade and other kind of standard criteria. Typically, the vast majority of our coffee is priced above fair trade. So there are a number of criteria they use to determine that. Living income, I think, since the pandemic and the rise of sort of coffee costs, it's probably a little bit less of a sensitive issue as it was before the pandemic. Coffee farmers, I think, are getting fair and often getting fair and living income prices now for their coffees where they might not have been before coffee. The cost of coffee, the price of coffee rose. But it's something that the team sort of determines, based on fair trade, cost of living, and at the origin site, and a number of other factors.
How involved are you with the origin sites and sharing their story? You mentioned telling the stories of your customers, but is that part of the Bellwether marketing, process, or letting people who are buying your coffees know, like, hey, this is where it's coming from and who these people are?
Absolutely. So on the website, you can navigate to the coffee the marketplace store, and you'll see images of the farms that they've shared with us. In some cases, we've gone to those sites and captured that photography and the story of the farm. So some of them are women owned, and operated cooperatives. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are organically grown and harvested, coffees. The story that they want to tell, that their unique sort of process, the story of sort of the origin, the climate, the local culture, all of that information is on the site for the customers to share. So we do origin trips. We have in some cases we'll do webinars. There's one from most recently we did a webinar with a producer in Colombia, Andres Martinez. I would highly encourage everybody to check out. Super interesting story. He came from the beer industry in Colombia and is doing a lot of really interesting natural fermentations um, uh, from origins that are grown by, I think, indigenous farmers in the southern part of Colombia. So we tell those stories any way we can. We share them with the customers. I find the customers are very interested in telling the story of the coffee and where it comes from. And that's really what the marketplace is all about.
You, a year and a half in this industry, but before that, we mentioned Solar City, Tesla, Wing, all some connection to what we call the sustainability industry, or what I kind of think of in some way, even at a high end luxury, like depending on how you look at it. Coffee being inherently, you mentioned roasting is dirty, but it's also an impactful business. We're shipping products around the world. Now with AI being infused into technology, into roasting machines, there's the whole data center question everybody's kind of hearing about in the news. I'm wondering about you. Did you go into the workforce thinking I want to have at least some connection? Was there something inherent, or is that just sort of how it played out, and then one thing led to another? And where do you find yourself now? Because I think I'm in my middle ages. The person I was and my motivations have changed a lot, but there's still that core of who I was when I was 20 coming out of college, looking at what I wanted to do in the world. Is that, how did that journey go for you, and why are you where you are?
Yeah, for me personally, I think you sort of alluded to this earlier, about the tension between finding the thing that you want to do and finding the thing that you feel like you can support, yourself, and then eventually a family. A family, in my case, I've got two teenagers, um, and I moved to San Francisco after college, and there's no sugarcoating it. It was very expensive, right? And I started in finance and then found my way to tech. And honestly, I think a lot of the decisions that I made early in my career were, okay, how much is my rent? Um, how much, what do how much money do I need to make to, pay my rent and have some left over for food, right? And then after a few years, you get to a place where you can make slightly different decisions and take a little bit more control over your own destiny. For me, it was within technology. I strongly wanted to do something that I felt contributed to society beyond just making money for a small group of people or for a company. And that was for me clean technology. This was about 22 years ago, like early 2000s. There was a lot of venture capital, pouring into clean technology. I ultimately found, and I was working at a communications firm, and I co-founded the clean tech practice with another person working at that firm. And we would mostly work on startups. We work with Gavin Newsom on the Clean Tech Open. We did LED lighting. I worked on sort of inverter technology. I did a little bit in solar. Ultimately, I found Solar City because Elon Musk and Lyndon Rive and Peter Rive, who essentially started that company. Elon was the chairman, and Lyndon and Peter were the founders. They were the first people that I met that were applying kind of an intelligent business model to a clean technology, right? So it's not, I think, enough in sustainability to just be an environmental activist and say, everybody needs to adhere to a certain set of standards. You have to bring the customers along with you, right? And I think most people would like to protect the environment, right, at some level, whether they're conservationists or environmental activists. Like, there's a spectrum, right? But most people want to do something positive for the environment. I think there's a small group of people who that's the most, that's the first, second, and third priority for them, right? There's a much larger group of people who, they need to run a business. They want to create a product that their customers want. They need to control costs. They need to create an attractive product. Now, they would love to be able to do that in a way that's sustainable, right? But if they can't, they're going to create the product that everyone wants first. So I've tried to find opportunities where, in Solar City's case, it was solar power that's more affordable than utility power, or it's Tesla's. It's not just an electric car; it's an amazing car, right? In Wing's case, it's a super sustainable way to transport and deliver items, but it's also really fast. It's really convenient. In the case of coffee, it's really the only way to deliver that product with high quality. And in Bellwether's case, it not only is the most sustainable way to roast coffee, it's incredibly affordable. Roasting coffee, roasting green coffee, and providing it to the customer is a lot more affordable than buying roasted coffee and creating drinks and then selling the retail bags at a lower margin. It's very convenient, easy to use, right? So the product, first and foremost, is designed very well for the application. It's a great fit for cafes and restaurants that want to do this. It saves them money. It's easy. It gives them creative control over their product. They're creating the coffee. They're not buying someone else's coffee and selling it. So there are a lot of benefits that have nothing to do with sustainability. But the way that I've found you make sustainable impact is you create a product that's a very good product for its category and very appealing to customers. Provides what they want and need. That also happens to be sustainable. And the more that it's adopted, the more sustainable impact you're going to make.
I would say there's a spectrum of sustainable desires in this house that I live in, and I think that's fairly natural. Some people's priorities are different, and I think also people change over time. My values aren't the same today as they were in 1999. They're just not. They've evolved as things have changed. All of that. I mean, I understand that concept and how you've kind of ended up in those roles that give you the opportunity to make an impact while also making a living and so on and so forth. As you've gone through that process and now being in the this is going to be a challenging question, by the way, I think. Uh, Being in coffee for the last year and a half, do you think it's possible to say this is a sustainable cup of coffee when you really
I
factor in all of those things?
I think so. I think it's a more sustainable cup of coffee than a coffee that was roasted with natural gas that uses an afterburner that's pumping VOCs and smoke into the atmosphere. I don't know that there's a perfectly sustainable product that exists, but all we can really do is try to improve upon the processes that we encounter, right? The status quo. And I can very comfortably say that Bellwether does that.
You've had quite a few different experiences in the world, in coffee, outside of coffee. You're a family man. I'm wondering if you have a piece of advice. It's something I ask everyone on behalf of Roastar, they're our presenting sponsor. Any sort of advice you'd like to offer anyone listening about either the industry at large or just something that's kind of stuck with you and helped you kind of work your way through your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I think it's I would say two things, right? Which is I guess is cheating. I would say, stay in the moment, enjoy each stage of life for what it brings. Like it's easy to get caught up in the past. What did I do before, and can I rinse and repeat that? In a new role. I find that each project requires something different to be successful, and it's easy to get caught up in the future. Where do I want to go? And not focus on both the successes that you're having currently and the lessons that you're learning. That was the best advice I got at my wedding. Enjoy each stage of life for what it brings. And I find it's really good advice professionally and personally. The other thing is listen to your customers. So you know, no matter how good your ideas are, really you're coming up with ideas, on their behalf. They understand what they want much better than you do, and they're going to use your product in ways that you never could have envisioned or imagined. We have customers doing, roasting classes. We have customers doing, we have Concrete Jungle in Brooklyn does 2 vinyl DJ sets a week, right? As that they've noticed that, Gen Z are not drinking as much alcohol as previous generations did. Guilty as charged. And so they're kind of taking some of the traditional, what you would just associate with a nightclub or bar experience, and making it a coffee experience. I had my in-laws live in Taiwan. I had a chance to go to Taipei, and I thought, oh, this is kind of for Christmas. I was like, this is a tea drinking culture. No, there's coffee everywhere. And I think younger people in Asia, we had a long labor in Japan as well, like an overnight labor. So we were able to go into Tokyo and see what's happening with the coffee culture there. Muji has a Bellwether kind of in their flagship store in Tokyo. So I had a chance to visit that. And I was amazed at the advances that coffee's making in Asian culture. So a lot of our preconceived notions about what's possible, what our products do well, they're going to be challenged. And so stay in the moment and listen to your customers. They're going to teach you far more than you could ever learn any other way about what's great about your product and how it should be used.
You mentioned earlier that you took a break between Wing and Bellwether. I think I read somewhere that one of the reasons was to write a book. Did that ever get written, or was it just the idea of writing a book?
Um, you know, you're both right, right? Like, or both of those things are true. It'll be a lifelong journey for me. I am writing a book. It's a work of fiction. It's a passion project. It's something I've always wanted to do. Nobody asked me to do it. Nobody's paying me to do it. So,
Nobody's asked me to do any of the things that I've ever done.
so yes, I am writing a book. I will publish it someday. It is not finished. But yes, I between my last two jobs, I took a break, and I found it was sort of a healthy thing to do to kind of get off the roller coaster and sort of take stock of my life. And I'm grateful that I did, because I don't know, I might have just taken another tech job, and I'm so happy that I didn't, because it's an amazing product. It's an incredibly fun group of people, not just at Bellwether, but the larger community of coffee. I've really enjoyed hearing their stories, learning about the customers. So, I think it's great to take a break. It doesn't have to be a long break. It can be a short break. Pursue some passion projects. I attempted to get better at piano and attempted to get better at cooking, and I'm definitely trying to write a book. But I would encourage anyone to take a little break every now and then, take stock of your life, slow down, and process what you've learned over the previous period. It's a really valuable thing to do.
I would agree with that, and I would add to it. My own spin would be to do something that makes you a little uncomfortable, because it'll help you process, because you won't be thinking about all the things you just went through or the things you're about to go through. You'll be focused on the moment, um, which I have learned myself when I've taken a few of those breaks. One of the things that I try to do when I can, and don't always succeed on the show, but we try to think about things outside of coffee and just the world in general. I'm a big person as far as like supporting like our local Friends of Trees groups and our state parks and that sort of thing. Wondering if you have any sort of nonprofits, volunteer efforts, or things that you're passionate about that maybe you'd like to share, or you'd get out there and we can just draw attention to.
Yeah. Pear Tree Coffee. I'll give a shout out to one of our customers. It's a charitable organization for people with developmental disabilities, and they employ, um, uh, all of their employees have developmental disabilities, and they teach them to roast and serve coffee there. So it's in Pennsylvania. Check it out, Pear Tree Coffee.
We'll definitely do that and link to it as well. And the last question I have for you, Jonathan, you you were a coffee drinker, but now after spending time in the industry, when you go to a coffee shop, maybe one that's serving on a Bellwether or roasting on a Bellwether rather, what is it that you order?
Yeah, well, for me, variety is the spice of life, and I love coffee. So I love a good pour over. I love a French press. I love a batch brew. I love espresso. If I'm in Australia, I'll have a flat white. I find that they do the flat white incredibly well, and I've never had one outside of Australia that quite lived up to that. Unfortunately, I don't get to Australia very much now that Google's not paying for me to go. Uh, but
Yeah.
but yeah, sorry to give you such a varied answer, but I don't really have a single coffee drink. I don't have a single order. I mix it up. Oat milk latte as well. I enjoy a good oat milk latte. So
Did I miss anything today that you wanted to get out there about Bellwether, about yourself? Just was there anything that we shorted that we shouldn't have?
I don't think so. That was a pretty good conversation. I'm interested to hear more about your writing. I noticed that you wrote a novel about or a novella about a jazz musician, which is jazz is a passion of mine, and
Uh,
Sonny's
we
Blues
can.
is probably my favorite work of fiction,
I
and
will.
so
Yeah, I'll
I'll
share
have to
more
dig into
about.
that with you.
I'll share more about that off air. I don't think anyone here is here for that story. Jonathan, thank you for being here and for talking a little bit about yourself and about Bellwether. I certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.